welcome to today's executive panel, where we'll be talking about how leading companies adjust their operating model to improve strategy execution and results. My name is Garrett Sheridan. I'm president of Axiom Consulting Partners. Axiom is a management consulting firm that helps clients grow and transform through a unique combination of capabilities in strategy, AI, and behavioral science. I'd like to start by briefly introducing our distinguished panelists. Amy Mills is a Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Cox Automotive, a company focused on transforming the way the world buys, sells, owns, and uses vehicles. Alex Mestres is the CEO of the IPEX group of companies and CEO of Aliaxis Americas. Aliaxis is a global leader in manufacturing advanced plastic piping systems with a global workforce of over 16,000 employees operating in roughly 45 countries. And finally, Carlyn Solomon is the CEO at Santa Cruz Nutritionals, the leading contract manufacturer of enhanced confectionery delivery systems for the nutraceutical market. Carlyn brings over 30 years of senior leadership experience in global healthcare technology businesses, including drug, biotech, and medical devices. And for today, we're going to focus in on three primary areas. First of all, why and how companies change their operating model to improve strategy execution. We'll ask our panelists to share lessons with us. What advice would they give to other leaders that are planning to embark on an operating model redesign? And then finally, and importantly, how do you make the change stick once you go through the process? So I think it'd be helpful if each of you could briefly describe your company in slightly more detail and also your primary source of competitive advantage. So what is it that makes your company win? And Amy, maybe we can start with you and Cox Automotive.
Sure. So as you mentioned, Garrett, our vision, our actual vision statement is to transform the way the world buys, sells, owns, and uses vehicles. And that's really more so a nod to the transformation that's occurring in the auto industry than anything we're actually creating. But we do see a massive opportunity taking the dealer software businesses and asset management services we have today into this digital world and transformation that's occurring. So our core business is really that, enabling the buying and selling of vehicles from OEMs, dealers to consumers, and the financing that happens with lenders, as well as providing the inventory sources through our Mannheim auctions. So our differentiation is really the view we have of the value chain horizontally across all the participants that have interest there. And then we're taking those to the new wave of growth in automotive called mobility, which is essentially an expansion of the industry to be inclusive of transportation solutions other than those consumer-owned vehicles. So our business is really about today making auto retailers successful and tomorrow making transportation buyers successful.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Alex, maybe you could do the same thing in terms of a quick overview of Aliaxis and IPEX?
Sure. So we are a leading manufacturer of thermoplastic piping systems. And as you said, Garrett, we're part of a global group called Aliaxis with presence in about 45 countries. In the Americas, we serve the Canadian and US market under the IPEX brand, and we have 27 manufacturing facilities coast to coast. We serve the Latin American market under mainly a brand called Dermont. Overall, in the Americas, we cover 12 countries with 34 manufacturing sites and about 5,700 employees. We serve four distinct markets. One is the plumbing market. Second one would be the municipal infrastructure market, the industrial market, and the electrical market. Now, I think your second question, Garrett, was about maybe our competitive advantage and what makes us different.
Yes.
The foundation of how we drive growth is really our focus on customer intimacy. When you look at the typical model of customer intimacy, product leadership, and manufacturing efficiency, we focus a lot on customer intimacy, but also our focus is on our ability to constantly innovate and bring new products and solutions to the market. Now, to drive customer intimacy and a customer intimate culture, we obviously invest a lot of time in understanding the end users and maintaining very strong relationships with our distributors. But the key of ingredient of our differentiation is that within IPEX, every function, every department, every individual must prioritize their strategic based on the impact they have on customers. That makes us different.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. That's a great description based on everything I know about your business. Carlyn, same question to you. Could you give us a thumbnail of Santa Cruz Nutritionals and what makes you unique?
You bet, Garrett. We're focused on, and our purpose really statement is to make health and wellness enjoyable. And the way we do that is we take over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, probiotics, prebiotics, supplements, and different substances that improve health, and we put them in an enjoyable delivery form. So you can think of that as gummies or lozenges, pan-coated chews. And our role in that market is that we design, develop, and manufacture products for some of the leading household brands you would know and retailers that you would know as well. And our differentiation is we're able to do that quite well, and we innovate. Our whole focus is innovating, bringing new products to market. So half of our products are obsoleted within 4 years because we're continuously innovating around them.
Fantastic. And I can tell you from experience, I've been a customer of your gummy shot product, which is an energy delivery product. Maybe you could say something about that for a moment.
And we're really excited about that. You know, the energy market, all of us need a little boost, a lot of users of caffeine. We found a way to put in a great tasting form, in one gummy, we can put the amount of caffeine from a cup of coffee. The nice part about that is it tastes great, it's portable, you are able to dose it exactly how much you need and do so without upsetting your stomach. So we're just getting that launched. Thanks for the call out, Garrett. I know the sales have really picked up dramatically.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Well, now let's get into the meat of the conversation. And maybe each of you can describe why it is at this particular time or recently that your organization decided to make changes to your operating model. And Alex, maybe we could start off with you.
Sure. Well, in fact, you know, our situation is a bit unique because being part of a global group, we actually went through two simultaneous transformations of our operating model. The global operating model had to change to align with the reality that although we are part of this global company, the business activities are really, really regional. And so that was a shift that was happening. While at the same time in North America, we had to change our model because of a number of reasons. The biggest reason is that the business has experienced significant growth in recent years, and our strategic plan will see that growth accelerated even more. So as a consequence, we realized that to support that growth, we needed to invest in strengthening our capabilities, such as massive investments in manufacturing capacity, but also we understood that we had to build out our support functions. That meant bringing in new expertise, and one example would be, you know, building up our M&A team. As part of the plan is to do 1 or 2 acquisitions a year. And one of the big things that we had to change, obviously, is accelerate the programs to develop our people in every area. When you're facing hyper growth, I think that the whole support coming from HR is quite key.
Thank you. And Amy, maybe I know that your business had a lot of complexity in it, and that was one of the drivers, but maybe you can also share with us some of the other reasons why Cox Automotive decided to shift your operating model.
Yeah, well, there definitely the automotive ecosystem and the way those cars get from manufacturers into that consumer driveway have a lot of steps and some inherent complexity, which is what we largely help solve for our clients. But the reality of how we had grown up by acquisition. So I mentioned the horizontal view of the auto value chain we have for buying and selling cars. We had to have a lot of really strong leadership points in the different steps of that value chain. And what we came to realize is that as digital commerce becomes the way vehicles are sold over the next decade or two, the real value we can provide and our differentiations about the combination of things in those assets, the data, the customer relationships, and how we can stitch it together really to make our clients more profitable and efficient. So our real goal was, how might we need to set up differently when we've got this amazing portfolio of acquired companies that need to operate and work together differently day to day, not in, special projects. So ours was about speeding up our innovation to the end of better enabling our customers for the digital world of auto retail.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And Carlyn, same question to you. Why is it that your leadership team decided now is a good time to undertake a redesign of your operating model?
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, people obviously they went home. They decided I've got to take care of myself, and they started ordering a lot of vitamins. They started ordering substances that they felt could help them stay healthy. And so we saw a massive surge, kind of, if you will, a 2-year shift to the left of our strategic plan. So we quickly initiated a project to redo our strategic plan and say, is this growth real? Is it going to continue, or is there going to be a blip that goes up and down? And we became convinced that although we've been in a fast growing market, we're going to see most of the demand stick. And we would see this growth continue for the next 5-7 years. So we realized that our operating model we were using was not going to work. And to explain that a little more deeply, we had a lot of organic growth, but we'd also grown by acquisition. So we weren't exactly a holding company, but we also let people retain their autonomy. We weren't integrating the company very aggressively. We decided for us to be able to keep up with the growth and continue to grow even more rapidly with more plants, more equipment, and our equipment costs a great deal of money to purchase, we're going to have to change the operating model. And we wanted to do that in a way that we could scale it sustainably and continue to move this. So that was the impetus for it. And we're fortunate, one of our private equity owners knew Axiom, and we're fortunate to be able to work with you guys, Garrett, to help us on that process.
Well, it's certainly been a really interesting and fast-moving project in terms of the pace that your leadership team operates at, Carlyn. I'm curious, Carlyn and Amy and Alex, when you thought about prioritizing the capabilities you really wanted to build around within your operating model, what were they, Carlyn, in your case?
Yeah, so we started with innovation, which I mentioned is our primary value offering to the market. And we realized as you grow quickly, if you double in size, you got to double in innovation. If you triple in size, you got to triple in innovation if you want to continue the growth rate. And so the first thing we said is we're not going to be able to innovate the way we have in the past. We have to change that. The second thing we said is commercially, we're just not set up to really differentiate what customers need. If you're selling gummies to a grocery store chain, they really aren't looking for as much innovation as they're looking for some uniqueness in their labeling. If you're at the other end of the portfolio and you're working with a CPG company, they absolutely want a first to the world something. So we realized we could no longer treat every customer like they were the same. We had to differentiate customers and build teams around them. So we had to make a change there. And then finally, the rate at which we had to scale up heavy equipment and get it installed, purchase manufacturing, floor space to do that was very significant. To that point, we had been buying equipment from different vendors. It'd be completely different equipment. So you pick up an operator, move them from one place to another, they start over. So we did things like we started to harmonize how we purchased. And so those were the three things: innovation, how we commercially went to the market, and then how we operated on a manufacturing floor.
And Amy, how about with Cox? What were the capabilities that you really prioritized as critical to the strategy?
Well, certainly our scale. So we also operate in markets outside of the U.S. Our scale is in the U.S. market, but there was a common denominator across UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, and some of the strengths we have as a company. And so the core, our ultimate center is that Mannheim auction business where we trade used vehicles between commercial sellers, commercial owners, lease returns and repos, to dealers and to retail. So the process of doing that, our largest and longest business, gives us great strengths in the readying the vehicles for that sale. So managing, storing, transporting, and refurbishing those used vehicle assets. And then the data that we learned there helps us be much better at helping retailers do same activities in their dealership rooftops. And so we sell a suite of software services there as well. So those two things really are the core capabilities. And what we recognized is we had an ability to, at the scale we operate, take some of the non-core functions right off the plate of the customers that we service in different ways than we have traditionally. So not just trading vehicles one owner to the next when a dealer has aged inventory they want to liquidate, or a bank or lender gets a lease return back, but that when they need to retail that vehicle, we could ship it to their store, the customer driveway, to actually have it ready. So it was that same cross where we had drawn business lines organizationally, innovation that we really needed to bulk up on the set of core capabilities, the things we already did well.
That makes sense, Amy. Thanks. And Alex, you already touched on the fact that for you, innovation and customer intimacy were critical capabilities. And you also mentioned beefing up or strengthening the human resources organization. Were there any other functional areas where you invested more in capabilities to support the kind of scale you're talking about?
Yeah, well, and maybe I'll answer the question a little bit different than Amy did. In our case, if you remember, Axiom did help us look at our capability, the capability exercise that we did. and at the end of the day, because of the growth rate that we're experiencing, we really needed to add capabilities everywhere. And so I know that the word priority is, pick one, but we couldn't really do that. And so the whole process of how to prioritize all of these new capabilities we needed was done by doing three things, basically. Number one is look at the as is, and then look at the to be state. And you guys helped us with that, if you remember.
Yeah.
And then we had to break the the needed capabilities by function. So to make it a bit more palatable and to break it in work streams, and so people could work on their own work stream and then prioritize what they needed to tackle first. And then in terms of timing, of prioritizing which investments would have the biggest impact in eliminating the gaps, that's how we prioritized it. And look, a couple of examples I already mentioned. Our HR group, for example, became a lot more strategic. And we built a team of HR business partners to help the rest of the organization during this growth period, which we didn't have before. Another thing we also increase in capabilities, and we're still in the middle of that, is building our M&A team, as I mentioned before. So in our case, because growth impacted everybody, we had to actually add capabilities everywhere.
And Garrett, just to dovetail on what Alex said, I think that we did a similar exercise with your and Axiom's help to understand the gaps for how we intended or what we intended to achieve, and then where were their gaps. So M&A also a great example of where we invested further organizationally, because we saw that to realizing our ambition at the speed we'd like, tucking in additional capabilities and actually finding some technology solutions that could help automate activities we do today was going to be a critical part of that success. So we have, since we work together, grown our M&A team significantly. So that, to me, is part of the value of thinking through a lot of this, is taking your ambitions down to what organizationally resource might you need to have headroom in well ahead of working down the path.
So taking a very proactive approach to looking at long term and then sort of stepping back and saying, what do we do now? What do we do next year, et cetera? I'm curious, Alex, if a peer CEO of yours in a company about the scale of yours was to call you and say, hey, listen, we're about to go through a big operating model and org redesign, what advice would you give to him or her?
Yeah, maybe a couple of things. And again, I'll be a bit generic, but it did apply to what we did when we started the process. I mean, we did know that we had to change the operating model, and we had to probably reorganize, the design of the organization. So the mistake that some people made, and in a sense we needed to be really conscious of it, is that often people go towards organizational structure right away. You need to change the model, go to the structure, and what I mean by that is start changing lines and start changing boxes and so on. So I would say that before getting into names, into boxes, the initial focus should be really one on identifying the capability gaps, as I mentioned before, the as is versus the to be. And by the way, this is something that, if you remember, Garrett, we talked a lot at the beginning when we did the exercise with you guys, where we were designing the capabilities, and we said, look, this is not about how many people or names, but it's what capabilities do you need. So first, identify the gaps. Then you go to roles and responsibilities. And one of the things that also was quite important is having clarity on how decisions will be made. Then to complete, the whole picture, make sure that you have a clear set of performance metrics to drive accountability and results. The other thing the other second advice that I would say is that change management is really, really important. You need to involve key leaders in the discussions multiple times, lots of listening, doing it in person, avoid death by PowerPoint. And for us, because we're so customer intimate, and that's key to our strategy, involving those people that are closest to the customer to ensure that any changes in the operating model wouldn't result in a negative experience for our customers. So again, two things would be, focus on organizational design, not necessarily the structure right away, and then pay a lot of attention to change management.
That makes perfect sense. And I think that you're absolutely right. So many companies, when they think about making a change, they start with the org structure. And the challenge there, of course, is everybody that's looking at it has a vested interest in where the boxes end up. So it's hard for people to be objective. That's certainly been our experience along the way. Amy, any advice that you would offer to one of your peer strategy leaders or senior executives undertaking change?
I would echo quite a lot of what Alex said, particularly around the what seem like smaller tactical items around the tail of work you have to do on just not just decision rights, what are the critical ones and who makes them, but then how you make sure that internalizes for every participant in the chain of that decision. And so you have to sweat those small details and follow them through. But for us, and I guess my biggest learning was you really have to start with, and I think Carlyn mentioned this too, is that a strategy that all the folks at the top, that core executive team, have all had time to work on together and are believing and all rowing in the same direction. Because if you don't have the foundation of a strategy and one that's up to date with, Carlyn, as you mentioned, there were events that said, wow, the world around us has changed and it's persisting. So we might need to think about this differently. We had done that exercise, and without that grounding, the operating model really has to be the how of your strategy. And if you're not aligned, so I'd make sure you've done that work ahead and then get some outside help to be able to the points you've made. Everybody has skin in the game when it comes to changing roles and responsibilities and decision rights. So getting some objective help and folks that can hold a mirror up that might not be easy to look in sometimes.
They're great insights.
Make those tough decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, really helpful. Carlyn, you've been through changes as a global leader in healthcare companies of all sizes, multi-billion dollar international global companies. And now you're in a very, very high growth environment. What do you see as the difference in terms of making changes like the ones we're describing in those really large organizations versus organizations that might be just under a couple of $1 billion?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of the core foundation of what you're doing is the same. Got to have a good strategy. It's a lot of what Alex and Amy walked through. You got to have some coherence. The management team's got to understand it. You got to have the right why. But when you're in a larger company, there's just more resource. So not, in a smaller company like we're in, where it's very fast growing, every person matters. And it's not to say in the bigger company they didn't, but there was more redundancy, there was more resource. You're also dealing in a lot larger company with a set culture, because usually it's been around for a while. So you have to, maybe the strategy would dictate you have to change a culture a bit, but you're starting from a base. You can't wander completely off from that, right? That won't work in a larger company. I would say in our company, a smaller company, you do have to oftentimes make a very big shift in the culture of the company. So for instance, part of our company was very focused on operational excellence. That was how they competed. we felt there was a bigger opportunity on innovation. So we had to go focus and really shift that. You probably couldn't do that in a company that was of big size. And then finally, in a larger company, there is a great inertia. That's the old flywheel concept, right? That flywheel is turning, and if you want it to change speed, that takes a lot of effort. In a smaller company, you are able to do that more quickly. I mean, we like that. We're able to get together as a leadership team, set a direction. I think you've been in some of these meetings, and within literally hours, we're starting to go in the right direction after we thought through it. So I think those are some of the differences. So some good on each side and some challenges on each side.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. I'm just wondering too, how do you make the change stick? Oftentimes companies go through changes and they slip back to the way they used to do things. Alex, what are your thoughts on some advice you'd offer in terms of making the change stick?
Yeah, maybe a couple of things, and first of all, you have to think about that while you're doing your changes, right? Think about, once we implement that, how will we keep it going? I think so. That means that the first thing is you have to have a clear roadmap with milestones and a good tracking system. The second thing I would say is you have to communicate, share the progress, share the successes, and talk about it so it sticks. And the other thing too that often is forgotten, for us it's been quite important, is to allow for adjustments. Sure, there was a plan that was put together, this new operating model, new ways of doing things, but take the time to review and maybe redirect if needed. Maybe evaluate what's working, what's not working, and allow the organization to make necessary changes. And then again, use that to communicate again, and maybe adjust your milestones and your tracking methods, let's say.
Makes sense. Amy, any thoughts on the same question? How do you make the change stick? What are you all doing to try to make it stick?
I think definitely the strategic discipline that Alex mentioned, and the flexibility to acknowledge where, if execution has been imperfect, where are things out of alignment, because all the decisions that you make through the project, and all the different, everything from our resources in one area, shared, pooled, or dedicated, to what decision rights you all have to work in concert. So you have to actively manage and make sure the outcomes are what you expected out of the work and the new design. But I think the way to track that really wires into the system is you have to have KPIs measured to the leaders that are in the major intersections of your organization chart, and really ultimately accountable for the outcomes, set to their compensation and success is defined by those outcomes, along with all the other financial responsibilities that they have. So just has to, Carlyn mentioned culture, the old adage that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Really have to have those things in place to really make your culture start to not change necessarily, but drive towards those same outcomes, have everyone driving towards the same outcomes.
That makes sense. And Carlyn, I've seen you open up your leadership team meetings and very consistently reminding everybody of the purpose, what you're trying to accomplish together. And I think that discipline around communication, Alex, you said you got to communicate. I think that's important. And I think really good leaders also simplify, because a lot of this is complex. What else would you add, Carlyn, besides that discipline that you clearly have around communicating succinctly and very consistently?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that I think it's a heavy demand on a leader when you're going through change and the transition. So I think you have to be there to explain the experience and explain how the experience fits. So I think that's really important. I also think you have to change probably a lot of your HR systems. So we're doing that with Axiom's help. We've changed our entire hiring approach, how we get about that, what we're looking for when we're making key hires. We change our development approach, development of teams, development of individuals. And then the only other thing I would mention is that we try to celebrate more. I think all of us are type A's, and as soon as we take a nanosecond to go, oh yeah, that was an awesome result, great job team, and then we're on to, but we need to start to focus. And so what we're trying really hard to do as a management team is celebrate those successes, even if they're small.
And maybe if I could add to that, Carol, because you talk about changing your HR approach and celebrate and so on. It doesn't, it's a difficult thing to do sometimes, but one of the, another approach to make things stick, obviously, is to reward alignment towards the new operating model. And obviously, we all understand that reward doesn't necessarily mean compensation. There's many ways of rewarding people, but when there is a chance to do it and it could be efficient, it would also be, a good way to make it stick, which is part of the, I guess rewarding would be also part of what you call celebrating, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think that the insights that you've all shared are rich and will be valuable to many leaders that are thinking about embarking on an operating model redesign. I wrote down a few things that I think are key takeaways from the conversation. I'd just like to play them back and see if you think I got them right or if you'd add or change them. The first thing that I heard from each of you is that it's got to be grounded in strategy. And Amy, you said the top team has to be very aligned and committed to that strategy and understand what it is. So that's the first one. The second one, Alex, I think you brought this up, but I saw Amy and Carlyn nodding their head around, let's not start with the boxes and lines. Let's think about the strategy and the capabilities, and we'll get to the right structure later in the process. And then the third thing was, several of you mentioned clearly defined roles, accountabilities, decision rights, and aligned rewards and metrics to drive focus and accountability. So I think those three are pretty important. The strategy, it's got to be grounded in it. Don't start with structure, and do several different things to sustain the change, as you all just described. Is there anything else that you would add?
One thing, Garrett, that we didn't touch on that kind of surprised me, we spent a lot, and this, we spent a lot of time doing the with them, what's in it for me, with our senior leaders, right? And helping them get oriented into seeing themselves in the new organization and how that was going to work for them. And we couldn't rush that. I tried like, okay, now we can check that box, but we couldn't rush that. And that was a bit surprising to me, the energy we needed to put into it and the time it took.
Yeah, I think
that would be, I was going to say, well, be consistent with what I was saying. I mean, on change management, and what you just covered is exactly that, which would be the first step, right? What's in it for me? So.
Yeah, I also think, Carlyn, in your case, there's a wealth creation opportunity, given the level of growth and success you're achieving for Roundtable. I think it really does help focus people's minds on, yes, this is going to be a hard amount of work for each of us as leaders. It won't be easy, but the rewards are there in the case of a private equity backed company. So.
We sure hope so, Garrett.
I hope so too. On that note, I want to thank you all. This was a great discussion. I really appreciate you making time for it. It's late on a Friday afternoon. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.